my adopted sister, an omega who has always seemed delicate, harmless, and wolfless, vanishes the night before full moon. Everyone, including my parents and my mate, the alpha who's supposed to protect me, blames me for driving her away. They drag me to the memory offering altar, bind my wolf in silver chains, and demand the truth from my memories. Little do they know that my body has been laced with 99 silver needles, buried deep under my skin, each one driven in by the hand of the innocent girl they adore the most. The Silverbane has seeped through my blood, eating away at my bones and my wolf spirit. I don't have long, so I seize control. I invoke the oldest right in the pack, the memory offering, to let them see the truth with their own eyes. For 3 years, I've been the one who was framed, humiliated, and tortured. Meanwhile, my so-called gentle sister is the real monster behind it all. By the time the truth is revealed, the Silverbane has devoured my soul. Bathed in the blinding white light of the right, I die on that cold stone altar, with a pain that cuts to the bone and a peace that feels almost like freedom. On the 7th day that my adopted sister, Tiffany Ross, went missing, Mom's eyes had gone bloodshot, her face pale as a sheet. She hadn't slept in a week. With the full moon approaching, her anxiety drove her to the edge. She gripped my hand, her tears soaking my palm. "Please, Seraphine, tell us where Tiffany went. You must know where she is." Had the chance to deny it, Dad plunked down a letter. His eyes were filled with anger and disappointment. "Look, she left behind this letter. Are you going to keep on pretending?" I had read that letter. Every word in it dripped with unfounded sorrow and accusations. 7 years ago, I was taken by a rogue and forced to survive alone out on the wild plains. I spent years fighting to stay alive until my family found me 3 years ago and brought me home. During the year I disappeared, Mom and Dad, overcome with grief, adopted an Omega girl a year younger than me. That was how Tiffany came about. The first time I met her, I thought we could be sisters. It didn't take long before I realized she couldn't stand the sight of me. For the past 3 years she had never stopped scheming against me. However, in the letter, she claimed that she had endured 3 years of torment, and was finally too tired to go on. She said she was leaving behind the parents who loved her deeply, so she could give everything back to me. She even emphasized that it wasn't my fault, and told them not to blame me. My mate, Eric Hunt, the alpha I had been promised to since childhood, looked at me with nothing but icy disappointment. "Seraphine, are you still not going to tell the truth?" he questioned. "You've been back for 3 years and bullied her every day since. Now you've even driven her away. Why can't you just accept her?" But I had no idea where Tiffany went. That was something I had explained repeatedly over the past 7 days. Nobody believed me though. They chose to trust the letter, and her crocodile tears. I was numb from the relentless finger-pointing and accusations at this point. In the end, I grudgingly said, "If you still don't believe me, I'm willing to undergo the memory offering. Let the moon goddess flame reveal the truth to your eyes." Mom and Dad were shocked at first, but they quickly looked relieved. "We're glad that you're willing to do that." Even Eric's eyes flickered with a hint of approval. He went as far as to promise, "Once we find Tiffany, we'll hold the bonding ceremony." Our mate bond should have been fulfilled when I returned 3 years ago, but he kept delaying it because of Tiffany. "She's still adjusting. We'll let her settle in first," he said. "You came back wild, raised by rogues. You need to learn proper etiquette," he said. "We'll hold the ceremony when you stop embarrassing yourself," he said. He put off our bonding ceremony again and again. 3 years had gone by, and here we were, still at the starting line. I lowered my head, not expecting anything anymore. I knew Eric would go back on his word the moment Tiffany shed a tear. So they brought me to the pack's sacred hall, where the statue of the moon goddess stood tall in the center. The flame around the altar pulsed with a cold, piercing light. The elder overseeing the ritual looked grave as he warned me. "The memory offering is one of the oldest forbidden rites. It burns your wolf and projects your memories for all to see. No one has ever survived the full offering. Are you sure you want to do this?" Pain exploded in my chest. The Silverbane was surging through my blood, ripping my bones and spirit apart with a million invisible needles. Still, I raised my head and calmly replied, "I'm sure." Even if the offering burned away my life, I had to make them see the truth. I was destined to die even without it, for the Silverbane was tearing me apart from the inside out. In that case, I would ensure they saw everything for what it truly was in my final breath. I was the one who had been framed, humiliated, and tortured for the past 3 years. It had always been me. As the flames rose, it felt like my body was being torn apart. The Silverbane in my veins tangled with the ritual fire. The pain so blinding that I nearly passed out. And yet, a bitter smile still hung on my lips. Would they finally regret what they did when they saw the truth? Would they regret blaming me for every sin and breaking me over lies? I knelt on the stone seat at the center of the altar. Cold silver chains wrapped tightly around my wrists and ankles, binding the very core of my wolf. The sacred fire flickered before me, its glow casting solemn light across the faces of the surrounding elders. Instinctive fear made my whole body tremble, but I forced myself to raise my head high as the ritual elder etched a glowing silver sigil onto the center of my forehead. That sharp pain burned straight into my spirit. Just as the sacred flames were about to touch my blood, Eric grabbed my wrist. "Are you still not telling us where Tiffany is, even at this point?" he questioned, his eyes reminiscent of a frozen lake with rage boiling beneath the surface. Tears blurred my vision as I shook my head. My throat was too tight to form a single word. In his eyes, my surrender was defiance. With a flick of his hand, he tore himself away from me. His voice cut colder than the chains around my wrists. "You've disappointed me for the last time, Seraphine. Elder, begin the offering." The sacred fire pierced my veins in the next second. Agony exploded through me. The Silverbane twisted with flame, tearing through my bones like they were made of paper. Outside the altar, Mom, Dad, and Eric sat in the sacred viewing chamber, eyes locked on the glowing veil of white flame. That was the projection, the manifestation of my soul's deepest memories, exposed by the memory offering. The elder's voice was low and ancient, reciting in the old tongue. Based on the strength of her wolf, her mind can only withstand 3 offerings. Any more, and she'll be reduced to ash. 3 is enough, Dad said coldly. We only need to see what happened before Tiffany disappeared. She has to know. The elder frowned, cautioning. Her memories are unstable. It's safer to start from the oldest ones. That way she won't shatter too soon. They nodded in agreement, patiently waiting for the sacred flames to tear open my mind. "Let us see the first time she met Tiffany," Mom choked out. "That must have been a happy memory." Happy. I let out a bitter smile. To me, that was the start of my nightmare. The vortex of memory pulled me under, and suddenly, I was back to that night 3 years ago. I stood in front of a luxurious villa, the cold wind slicing through my worn-out clothes. My parents stood at the door, tears welling in their eyes. "Seraphine, sweetie, you're finally back. You must have suffered so much out there." Tiffany slowly stepped forward and held my hand, her smile looking sweet and radiant. "Don't cry, Mom. Sarah is home now. She won't have to live like a rogue anymore." She wore a delicate lace dress, looking like a princess straight out of a fairy tale. I lowered my head, cheeks burning with shame. Years of living with the rogues had left me feeling worthless in front of her. Just as I tried to get closer, Tiffany suddenly covered her nose and stepped back, exclaiming, "What's that horrible smell? It's like beast droppings." A strange, pungent scent spread through the air, stinging everyone's nostrils. My parents' faces froze, and gone was the joy they had just shown. "Sarah, even if life on the run was tough, you should still keep clean. Don't you know that the smell of animal droppings attracts predators? If those scents are picked up, wild beasts could track us down and hurt us. Wait, are you doing this on purpose? To try and get us all attacked by beasts? But why? Is this your way of getting back at us because Mom and Dad adopted me?" Tiffany questioned. She backed behind Mom, her voice soft but accusing. "No," I stammered, panic rising. I had showered 3 times before reuniting with them and bought new clothes, spending all my savings. How could I possibly still smell? I didn't know which scent would attract predators, and I never wanted to hurt anyone. From beyond my memory barrier, I heard Eric's distant voice. "Elder, can we block out this part? It's too embarrassing." My heart felt like claws were ripping it apart. Mom's voice traveled over, icy and accusing. It was embarrassing. She grew up with the rogues, but the first thing she did upon coming home was to blame us for taking too long. She purposely made herself stink to attract predators, just to get back at us. From the very first meeting, Tiffany had managed to make everyone dislike me. The scene continued. I was brought to the third-floor bedroom. The servants treated me like a stray beast, scrubbing me clean and dressing me in a brand new dress. Tiffany personally helped make my bed and softly comforted me. None of us minds the smell on you, Sarah, so don't worry about it. Get some rest. The servants have prepared a nice dinner for you. Still, you can just say it if you hate me. I'll leave. Just don't use such dangerous revenge tricks anymore. Mom and Dad will get hurt. I fixed my stare at her, my voice shaking. It was you, wasn't it? You sprayed that stench on me. Tiffany paused in the middle of making the bed, a faint smile curling at the corner of her lips. You're smart, Sarah. I thought you wouldn't notice. She whispered, her eyes glinting with something cruel. That's right. I did it. I concocted the stench potion myself. Smells just like beast droppings, doesn't it? A sharp pain clenched my chest. I wanted to ask why she was doing this to me, but she suddenly squeezed out tears and turned to run out of the room. I followed in shock, only to see her throwing herself into Mom's arms. Mom, it's my fault, Tiffany cried. I shouldn't have said anything about Sarah's smell. She got really upset and it's all my fault. Startled by her crying, Dad immediately came over to comfort her. Mom, on the other hand, gently wiped her tears away. They stood at the doorway, showering me with only cold glares and not a single word of comfort. That memory, torn open by the flames of the memory offering, brought tears streaming down my face once more. My body trembled violently on the stone seat of the altar. The Silverbane in my veins tangled with the sacred fire, threatening to burn my bones to ash. Don't cry, Dad murmured from the sacred viewing chamber, letting out a low sigh. For a fleeting moment, guilt flickered in his eyes. Mom tried to comfort me too. We misunderstood you back then. Tiffany was young, and it was probably just a childish prank. You should forgive her. Yet, Eric's mind was somewhere else. He turned coldly to the elder and said, there are still 2 offerings left. Keep going, show us the memory of Tiffany's disappearance. The elder's expression darkened. He moved his hands above the sacred flames, tracing sigils in the air. Her wolf is on the brink. Any deeper, and she'll be at risk of complete obliteration. Didn't you say she could endure 3 offerings? Dad snapped, gritting his teeth. 2 remain. Proceed. The second memory offering ignited under the sacred fire, and my consciousness was once again dragged into the vortex of the past. Mom lay curled up in bed, writhing in pain. Dad sat beside her, sweat beading on his forehead from panic. The healer said we'll need wolfsbane from the dark forest to make the remedy, he said, his voice tight with worry. But no mercenary is willing to take the risk. Seeing Mom's pale face, I felt my heart twist with worry. Without hesitation, I turned and sprinted toward the dark forest. Relying on the survival instincts I had honed during my years among the rogues, I finally found the dangerous herb deep within the shadowy woods, where wolves roamed. However, what I failed to know was that wolfsbane could only be harvested using a silverbone vial. Touching it barehanded would let its poison seep straight into my bloodstream. I had barely made it out of the forest when the poison hit. My body convulsed violently, and I collapsed to the ground unconscious. By the time I staggered home the next day, my veins burning from the wolfsbane toxin, Dad met me at the gate with a slap. Your mother's on the brink of death, and you had the time to run off and play? I should have known that you were nothing more than a heartless rogue. He then brought Tiffany before me. See, Tiffany wore herself sick trying to find wolfsbane for your mother. And you? You disappeared like a coward. Tears streamed down my face as I struggled to speak. It was me. I went into the forest. Dad didn't bother to hear me out. He turned and helped Mom back into the villa without another word. She glanced back only once, but with a cold, distant look that shattered whatever scraps of longing I still had for her love. Tiffany stood in the shadows, out of their sight, flashing me a bright, venomous smile. Thanks, Sarah. I wouldn't have dared go into the dark forest without your lead. Oh, and next time? Wear gloves. Wolfsbane doesn't just sting, it kills. Outside the altar, voices bled faintly through the haze of the rite. Mom's voice trembled, thick with guilt. What? The wolfsbane came from Seraphine? She risked her life to get it. Why didn't she ever tell me? I was wrong about her. Dad let out a heavy sigh. That child's like a mute. She never explains herself and always shields Tiff. Once we find her, I'll have to discipline her. 3 days of confinement should do. However, Eric shook his head with disapproval. Tiff's been out there suffering for a week, fending for herself. We'll talk about punishment later. Besides, Seraphine is her older sister. She'll understand. She always does. I opened my eyes on the altar, a wry smile pulling at the corner of my lips. So, even when the truth lay bare before them, they would still take Tiffany's side. And me? I was never an option for their love. The elder's hands moved slowly through the sacred flames, drawing glowing sigils in the air. The fire hissed low in warning. Alpha Stefan, he said gravely. Her wolf has already endured 2 offerings. If we force a third, the consequences may be irreversible. It's not just the pain, her soul could scatter. It may never return. Mom's voice trembled with hesitation, breaking the heavy silence. But it's been 7 days since Tiff disappeared. If she's still out there, who knows what's happened to her? I can't wait any longer. If Seraphine loses her wolf, then so be it. We'll care for her for the rest of her life. Her voice cracked and dissolved into sobs. Dad was silent for a long time, his gaze cold and sharp as a blade. Proceed. Whatever the cost, I must find my daughter. Even Eric said nothing. He merely pressed his lips together, giving a quiet form of consent. The flames roared to life, and so the third offering began. I was dragged into the deepest reaches of memory. That day, Dad announced his plans for my bonding ceremony. Seraphine, your bonding ceremony with Eric will happen in 2 weeks. The venue is already reserved, he said matter-of-factly, as if it were law. And I was nothing but a replaceable piece on the pack's game board. Whispers were relentless around the pack. Eric was always seen with Tiffany. Although his family, the Breeze Pack, favored her, despite her status as a rootless Omega, adopted and without blood ties, bloodlines remained sacred. Only blood made a union legitimate in the eyes of the elders. Still, Dad had his reasoning. This way, Tiff's reputation will stay intact. No one will dare gossip again once Seraphine and Eric's mate bond is formed. His meaning couldn't be clearer. Tiffany would have bonded with Eric long ago if I weren't his biological daughter. But Tiffany wasn't the least bit grateful about it. Her eyes burned with hatred and jealousy. Why? She screamed, her voice hoarse with rage. Eric clearly loves me more. Mom and Dad care about me more. Why does the mate bond get to go to you? She stepped closer, her fingers gleaming with silver needles. If you hadn't come back, I would have been the only daughter of the Rain Pack. No one would call me a low-born Omega, and no one would look down on me for being born without a wolf. Then came the pain. The needles stabbed into my flesh 99 times. Each one was laced with Silverbane, burning through my veins like wildfire and tearing me apart from the inside. I curled up on the floor, my body shaking with agony, and cried out. That mate bond was mine. I carry the Rain bloodline. Why should I give it to you? Tiffany looked down at me from above, a cruel smile playing on her lips. I'm the one who grew up in the Rain Pack. You're just a stray mutt who came crawling back with a tainted wolf. Everything in this pack belongs to me. If you want to blame someone, blame our parents for being fools. Blame Eric for loving and choosing me. She lifted her foot and crushed each of my fingers under her shoe, each crunch matching my heart-wrenching screams. Don't worry. I'll keep you alive, she muttered. Once I take over the pack, I'll throw you back where you belong, in the trash heap. Maybe I'll spare you some cash, just so you don't starve to death. Then, she raised her brow and laughed lightly, like this was all some game. Oh, and tomorrow? I'm running away from home, she said with a calculating smile. Meanwhile, you get to enjoy what it's like living as their only daughter. I can't wait to see them lose their minds over my disappearance. The Silverbane spread uncontrollably, blurring the line between dream and reality. A sharp, overwhelming pain seized my head, as if countless needles were piercing through it. The sacred fire on the altar burst into a flare, flames leaping high as the sigils flickered wildly. Alarmed, the elder exclaimed, "This isn't good. The rite's backfiring. The Silverbane is clashing with the sacred fire. Her wolf is collapsing." A searing pain engulfed me, choking the air from my lungs. The poison surged deep into my bones and flesh, extinguishing even the faintest spark of my wolf. In that split second, life slipped away. I could faintly hear their hushed whispers, Mom's soft sobs, Dad's ragged breathing, and the deafening silence from Eric. Now that they had seen the truth, would they finally shed a tear of regret for me? Alas, fate forbade me from ever knowing the answer. My soul hovered above my own body, suspended in that cold, flickering hall of right and fire. What surprised me was that I didn't immediately dissolve into the night. Drawn by something unseen, I drifted through the massive obsidian doors and lingered above them, watching. Eric, the alpha I had once trusted without hesitation, sat shrouded in the shadows, a cigar between his fingers. Smoke curled through the dimness, his face dark with an emotion barely held in check. Dad's fists were clenched so tightly that the veins on his arms bulged, as if he might shatter the stone walls with his bare hands. And Mom, tears streamed endlessly down her face. No matter how frantically she tried to wipe them away, they kept falling, carving silent lines down her cheeks. There it was, my answer. They all saw it. The sacred fire blazed, casting every image from the memory offering into the air. 3 years' worth of humiliation and pain. Every lash mark, every cruel sneer, and every unspoken wound was laid bare before their eyes. They saw the truth behind their perfect daughter's mask. They saw how she could wear the sweetest smile while acting on the vilest things. Not even my annihilation could stop me from laughing. Dad drove his fist into the stone wall, growling, "Wake Seraphine up. Wake her. I need to ask her myself why she never said a word after suffering for 3 whole years." In his eyes, I saw the last flicker of desperate hope. He wanted to believe the sacred fire had lied. He wanted to believe those projections were illusions. He wanted to believe that the daughter he doted on wasn't as cruel as reality let on. My laughter turned bitter. Tears, ghostly and weightless, slid down my cheeks, only to vanish into the air. It wasn't that I never told. I did. Time after time, only for them to believe Tiffany's story. Mom shook her head, weeping. "Seraphine, we were wrong. I never imagined you were living like that. I thought Tiffany was just young and playing around." I hovered just above her, letting out a quiet sigh. "No, Mom, you knew," I thought. "You saw her shove me, hit me, and tear me down. Yet, in your eyes, it was nothing more than sisterly roughhousing. Were my scars part of the game? Were my broken bones meant to be followed by laughter?" A broken laugh slipped from me again, and my soul trembled with it. Dad's voice was hoarse and thick with regret. "Bring her home. She's suffered enough. As long as she's with us, we'll make things right." Eric nodded, his voice surprisingly tender. "The bonding ceremony will go on as planned. Seraphine's my mate, and no one else can take her place." Mom's sobs trembled in her throat. She placed a hand gently on Eric's shoulder and said, "She's endured too much. From now on, you must be good to her." As for Tiffany, her voice faltered. Dad frowned, his tone sounding dark and heavy. "She might still be missing, but I'll bring her home no matter what. She'll face discipline. She must learn." The air stilled. Even Eric said nothing. They kept talking about reparations, redemption, and how they would fix everything. Just then, the silence was shattered. The butler burst through the sacred hall's doors, breathless and falling to his knees. "Alpha Eric, Miss Tiffany has returned." The atmosphere shifted in the sacred hall. Before this, they would have done anything to welcome her back. They would drop every bit of pride and caution just to see her smile. Dad had even considered dissolving our mate bond to give her my place. But now, after the truth was laid bare, their expressions finally darkened. Mom let out a shaky sigh, choking out, "No matter what, she's still our daughter. We have to bring her home and teach her how to do better." Dad nodded firmly. Eric, still silent, followed them along. They spoke like they were doing the right thing, but their steps were unmistakably hurried. They all left to welcome Tiffany, abandoning me alone before the sacred flames of the memory offering. Not long after, Elder Yosef, who had been performing the offering, stumbled out of the hall, his face drenched in sweat. He screamed, "Alpha Eric, bad news. The sacred flames burned too deep, and the rite has gone too far. Seraphine's wolf has gone still, she's stopped breathing." No one heard him. Not a single one, because they had all run to Tiffany. I was still laughing. The sound shook with something broken inside me, and my tears were as clear as glass. At that moment, whatever hope I had left in my chest crumbled to dust. That was when my heart truly died. The air, laced with the remnants of blood, shifted, carrying me away from the altar like a torn soul adrift. I drifted slowly and weightlessly until I found myself hovering at the edge of familiar territory. Home. Mom, Dad, and Eric, who had rushed back in a panic, saw Tiffany curling up at the front steps of the villa. She looked a mess, clothes torn, hair tangled, and her eyes wet and glinting like a frightened pup who had lost the shelter of her pack. The moment she saw them, she broke down sobbing. "Mom, Dad, Eric, I missed you guys so much." She staggered to her feet, legs shaky and unsteady, then collapsed again onto the ground and cried, "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come back, but my money got stolen. It's not that I want to cling to you guys. I'm just too hungry. One meal. I'll have one more meal before leaving." Tiffany thought the three would rush over and wrap her in their arms, comforting her and promising to bring her home without question. But she waited, and no one moved. Their expressions were twisted with emotion, somewhere between sorrow and detachment. It was Mom who finally stepped forward, unable to bear the silence. She pulled Tiffany to her feet and sighed. "Go clean yourself up. After the meal, pack up and move out." Dad's face hardened like stone, his voice sounding heavy but restrained. "There's a small apartment nearby. I've made arrangements, and you'll live there from now on. You can come visit when you need to." Tiffany's head snapped up, disbelief flooding her eyes. "Mom, Dad, are you kicking me out?" Her voice cracked as tears hit the pavement. She turned to Eric, almost screeching, "Eric, not you too, right? You're not leaving me, are you?" Eric lowered his gaze, his eyes flashing with a cold glint. "In a few days, Seraphine and I will go through with our bonding ceremony under the moonlight. To avoid misunderstandings among the packs, we should keep our distance." Tiffany felt her chest tighten, her face twisting in pain. She couldn't understand why things weren't unfolding the way she imagined. Her disappearance was supposed to make them panic and fulfill whatever requests she had. "Did Sarah say something to you guys? She's always hated me, hasn't she? I bet she said a lot of bad things about me while I was away." Mom finally broke down, covering her face and crying. "Tiff, why did you have to torment her? We saw it all. Everything you did to her since the day she came back to us." In contrast, Dad's voice was harsh. "Seraphine is our daughter. How could you treat her like that?" Tiffany's pupils narrowed sharply, her breath hitching. "And no, how did you guys even know? I mean, there must be a misunderstanding. Sarah had been a rogue for years. Maybe she's just not used to people being nice. She wasn't giving up making excuses just yet." "There's no misunderstanding," Eric interrupted coldly, his voice carrying the unique pressure of an alpha. "To find out the truth, we performed the memory offering. Seraphine offered up 3 years of her memories to the moon goddess. She endured unimaginable pain, but revealed the truth. Since the beginning, you've been the one tormenting her and setting her up." He slowly closed his eyes, then reopened them, frost and judgment shining in his eyes. "Even your disappearance was all a setup to frame her. Goodness, Tiffany. How many of the things you say are even true?" Tiffany finally panicked. With a thud, she dropped to her knees, clutching Mom's leg and sobbing uncontrollably. "I'm sorry, Mom. Will you forgive me? I was too scared. Seraphine is your real daughter, and I just couldn't let myself be replaced. I know you guys love me the most." The usually calm, proud, and untouchable Tiffany now broke down, crying more desperately than before. Mom looked at her, her heart torn once again. I could tell that she was wavering. "Tiff, you didn't have to feel this way. Even if Seraphine is our biological daughter, that doesn't replace the weight you hold in our hearts," Mom said, bending down. With tears shimmering in her eyes, she pulled Tiffany into a tight embrace, choking out, Seraphine has a blood bond with us, an imprint left by the moon goddess. But regardless, you've always been the daughter we love the most. Dad's expression softened too. He wiped the moisture from his eyes and spoke steadily and warmly, like a whisper deep in the night forest. Once Seraphine comes back, you must apologize to her that if she forgives you, you can stay and continue as a member of the pack. Tiffany snapped her head upward, her pupils shining with joy. She nodded eagerly and answered, "Of course, I'll apologize to her with a sincere heart. If Sarah won't forgive me, I'll stay outside the pack's gate under the moonlight until she does." Eric turned away coldly. "Seraphine is very sensible and kind. As long as you're sincere, she won't keep you out there for too long." Mom nodded quickly, as if to prove something. "That's right. Seraphine has always been a good woman. Even after suffering so much from the Silverbane, her heart remains kind. She'll be willing to get along with you just fine." "Right. Did Seraphine not come with us?" Finally, they remembered me, the one left behind at the altar. Dad looked a little awkward, his smile melting into a gentle one. "It's fine. Seraphine just finished the memory offering and probably needs some time to rest at the altar. It's for the better that let's pick her up right now." Before leaving, he still didn't forget to instruct the butler, "Scatter the imported night rose petals into the moon spring bath. Let Tiff soak and wash away the tension from the past week. Also, prepare the largest guest room for her, so that she can rest comfortably. And get the kitchen to make all her favorite dishes. Wait, send some desserts to her room first. We can't let her starve. Once we bring Seraphine home, we'll hold a feast for the entire pack." Still not assured, Mom pulled the butler aside and repeatedly reminded him until the very last minute. Only then did she reluctantly get into Eric's car. "Drive fast. We'll eat once we get Seraphine home. Tiff must be already starving." I floated high above, silently watching everything unfold below. As expected, a single tear from Tiffany could effortlessly erase all the sins she had committed and earn their forgiveness. The reason was simple: they had never loved me. Carried by the wind, I drifted above Tiffany, watching as she lounged contentedly in the rose-scented moon spring bath. One moment, she had been whining that the water was too hot. Next, she was complaining that the maid scrubbing her back wasn't pressing hard enough. She looked every bit the spoiled princess, basking in the luxury that should have belonged to the true blood heir. After her bath, Tiffany changed into a freshly tailored velvet dress and stepped into my room. With a sweep of her arm, she knocked all of the jewelry off the vanity. In the mirror, her reflection twisted into a feral sight: narrowed pupils, a sharp grin pulling at the corners of her lips, and a flash of something cruel beneath the surface. "Damn it, Seraphine. Why didn't you just die? If you did, Mom, Dad, and Eric would all be mine. Why didn't those 99 needles finish the job?" she snapped into the mirror. So, it hadn't been a moment of recklessness. It had always been planned and calculated. She'd wanted me gone from the beginning. "Why do you have to take everything from me? They were mine first, Mom, Dad, and Eric, and now, even your life? You won't leave anything for me, will you?" Fury surged in me, and I threw a fist with every ounce of strength I had left, only for it to pass through her. To her, regardless of her knowledge, I no longer existed. "But it's fine," she said with a chuckle, her eyes flashing with something manic. "I have so much more up my sleeve awaiting you. They'll always take my side. Sooner or later, everything of yours will belong to me." I reached up and wiped away tears that no longer existed. The irony burned deep. I was already gone, and she couldn't hurt me anymore, even if she tried. Yet I couldn't stop wondering, would Mom, Dad, and Eric still forgive Tiffany if they knew I was truly, irreversibly dead? Maybe. After all, Tiffany had always mattered more than me. My existence, tangible or not, never seemed to make a difference. Mom, Dad, and Eric returned to the altar in silence. This was the sacred place where werewolves offered their memory. Now it was empty. Only the faint glow of moonlight flickered on the cold stone walls, and not a single figure was in sight. What's going on? Did Seraphine leave on her own? Why didn't she tell us? Mom snapped with a mix of panic and blame as she searched every corner. We came all this way for nothing. Frowning, Eric immediately called Elder Yosef over. Where is she? Is she with you? Elder Yosef's voice trembled with fear. Alpha Eric, we're at the hospital. Ms. Rain is. They rushed to the hospital. Even then, Mom was still complaining in annoyance. It was just a memory offering. How did she end up in the hospital? Tiff's an Omega and more fragile by nature, but she never collapsed after a rite. Is Seraphine's body really that much weaker? However, the moment she pushed open the door and saw me lying motionless on the cold hospital bed, her voice cracked mid-sentence. What happened to her? Eric grabbed Elder Yosef by the collar, eyes burning with suffocating rage. What did you do to Seraphine? If anything happens to her, I'll make you pay for it. Elder Yosef trembled all over and frantically shook his head. It wasn't me, I swear. The memory offering affects the wolf, not the body. It can hurt, yes, but it's never fatal. I promise this has nothing to do with the rite. Dad chimed in at that moment, his voice audibly hoarse. Fatal? Are you saying she's? His eyes locked onto my still, cold body. His lips trembled, but he didn't dare take a single step forward. That's right. Miss Seraphine has passed. Before Elder Yosef could finish, Eric threw him hard against the wall. The stone behind him cracked like shattered glass under the impact. I'm going to make you and your whole pack pay for it. Eric's eyes burned red, his arm shifting into a wolf's claw. The beast within him was on the verge of breaking free, snarling with fury. Elder Yosef coughed up blood, but he still forced out a hoarse cry. It wasn't the rite that killed her. It was the Silverbane. The room froze. He stumbled back, waving for the healers in a panic, as if afraid no one would believe him. Dad's eyes flared with a desperate spark of hope as he urged. Please resuscitate her. She can't just die. We haven't even made it up to her. The healer stepped forward with a post-mortem report, his expression grim. I'm sorry. The Silverbane had spread through her blood and torn her spirit apart. Even the most powerful moon priestess couldn't have saved her. Mom finally broke down. She collapsed onto the bed, her cries filling the whole ward. Seraphine, sweetie, she screamed, hitting my still body and wetting my hair with her tears. You poor thing. And there I was, a translucent spirit hovering beneath the ceiling, quietly watching it all unfold. For the first time, I felt a strange emotion. It seemed that Mom was capable of crying for me. I had always thought only Tiffany deserved her tears. Eric suddenly realized something. So you're saying that it wasn't the memory offering that killed her, but the Silverbane? The healer hesitated, then nodded slowly, but shook his head the second after. The rite only sped up the poison's spread. Otherwise she wouldn't have lasted so long. It was those 99 silver needles, piercing her flesh and blood, that sealed her fate. Mom suddenly went limp and fell onto me. Dad, now pale, collapsed to the floor with trembling hands. So it was us who killed Seraphine. If we hadn't forced her to the altar, maybe she could have held on a little longer. No. Eric's voice sliced through the air with a definite edge. Seraphine's death was inevitable, but we all saw who it was who injected those needles into her body. His bloodshot eyes flashed, and he clenched his claws, murderous intent rising like a tide. Tiffany is the one who killed Seraphine. The room fell into an eerie silence. Mom and Dad were stunned, even forgetting to cry. Eric lowered his gaze, then stared coldly at Dad. So, are you going to mindlessly defend Tiffany? Without waiting for an answer, he declared firmly, whatever you do, I swear I'll make her pay for what she did. Dad's body trembled as if struck by lightning. Why? Why would the universe punish me like this? They're both my daughters. No. Mom interjected. Seraphine is our only daughter, and I'll never let the one who killed her go. She wiped away her tears, her expression now filled with hatred like never before. An adopted Omega, having the audacity to kill my daughter? She deserves to die. I stared at her in surprise, shocked by her reaction. Wasn't she always in favor of Tiffany? If she could choose, I bet Mom would rather her real daughter be her. Why the sudden change of attitude after I died? Even Eric became strange. He looked at me with deep affection, as if I were his most precious treasure, then mumbled tearfully, Seraphine, I promise I'll get justice for you. No one who hurt you will go unpunished. In the end, he rushed back to the villa with a grim expression. Mom and Dad hurried after him. The mood between the three got heavy. Curious, I floated behind them, wanting to see how they would treat Tiffany. As soon as they returned to the villa, Tiffany greeted them with a big smile. Mom, Dad, Eric, you guys are back. Where's Sarah? Did she not come back with you? Startled by how strangely cold they were, she quickly found her bearings and put on a sad expression. Is Sarah refusing to forgive me? That's fine. I'll just apologize to her. I'll do everything until she forgives me. She was ready to walk toward the door when Eric shouted, "Stand right there." The light flashed across her face. She turned and threw herself into his arms. I knew you wouldn't want to see me humiliate. Before she even reached him, Eric slapped her hard across the face, the sheer force knocking her to the floor. Tiffany's face swelled up within seconds. She sat there in shock, unable to process what had happened. Mom stormed up to her and grabbed her collar, her voice trembling with fury and heartbreak. I can't believe I ever treated you like my own. Who gave you the right to take my daughter from me? Mom, what are you doing? You're hurting me. Tears streamed down Tiffany's face. She couldn't understand how the woman who always loved her could turn so cold. Mom and Eric swung kicks and punches at her to let off the steam. She stumbled toward Dad, pleading desperately. Dad, what the heck is wrong with them? Help me. Dad said nothing. He turned away, fists clenched tight at his sides, and his eyes brimming with tears he refused to let fall. Why are you guys doing this? Didn't I already apologize? Tiffany yelled. Are you guys doing this for that stray mutt? At the mention of me, the two didn't hold back their blows. Mom yanked her outside and barked. A stray mutt? Coming from you. An Omega who doesn't even know her parents? Who do you think you are to speak about my daughter that way? Seraphine was my daughter, and you had to kill her. I'm going to make you pay. Hearing the news of my death, Tiffany visibly lit up with joy. She struggled out of Mom's hold and asked, Mom, is that true? Is Seraphine actually dead? But how could it have anything to do with me? I was away for a week. Now that she's dead, you have more reasons not to kick me out. I'm the only daughter you have left. She then looked at Eric. Despite her swollen face, she put on a trace of affection that was so fake it made one nauseous. Eric, you like me more, don't you? Now that she's gone, I can finally become your mate. Go on, tell Mom to get off my tail. Tiffany then turned to Dad. I guess I'm the only one you can rely on from now on, Dad. You're old, and she's dead. Can you even bear to lose me as well? Curious, I similarly looked at him to find out where he stood in the end. My logical, calculating Dad, known for weighing every option, then did something completely uncharacteristic. He approached Tiffany and delivered a single, powerful kick that sent her flying. I don't have a heartless and cruel daughter like you. I'd rather have no one to care for me in my old age than live with a murderer like you. Tiffany crashed through the pillars and eventually slumped against the villa's wall, unconscious. Take her and leave her in the dark forest. Dad ordered the guards. She was so proud of harvesting the wolfsbane alone, wasn't she? Now she'll get a taste of what Seraphine went through. Tiffany was carried away, bloodied and unconscious. Mom collapsed to the floor, staring blankly ahead like a statue with no soul. Seraphine, sweetie, the one who hurt you is gone now. Come back to me. I regret it so much. Can you forgive me? Ever since that day, Mom became absent-minded, often hugging a piece of wood and calling it by my name. Dad seemed to have aged 10 years. He took care of her every day and lost all interest in managing the affairs of the pack. 6 months later, Eric led the Breeze pack to launch an attack on the Rain pack. The centuries-old pack began to fracture and fall apart under his assault. Furious, Dad questioned. Eric, why are you doing this to us? I told you. Eric uttered, casting him a cold sidelong glance. No one who hurt her will go unpunished. Dad gave up resisting and was driven out of the pack by Eric. He quietly left with Mom and went to a distant grassland. After handing everything, Eric handed the pack over to his cousin to manage. He took my body and personally made a crystal coffin for me. Every day, while keeping me company, he also arranged all the work in his hands, as if he were dealing with his final affairs. He would talk to me every day, recalling our good times, and and start crying. Seraphine, I know I was wrong. I hope you know that I've always loved you. Since you came back, I'd been deeply drawn to you. When I knew you'd be my mate, I looked forward to our future every day. As for Tiffany, I only ever felt guilt toward her. Being kind to her was only my way of making up for it. Eric fished out a dagger, the light in his eyes slowly diminishing. Would you forgive me? Should I come to you instead? He stabbed the blade deep into his abdomen. Holding back the agony, he reached out and touched my face. Everyone who's ever hurt you has been punished. Seraphine, would you give me some time? Suddenly, his eyes brightened as he reached out toward me. Seraphine, is that you? I knew you couldn't bear to leave me. I flashed him a faint smile before my body disintegrated into translucency. Amid his terrified screams, I vanished. Sorry, but I couldn't wait for you. In the next life, I hoped that I would never see you again. Mom, Dad, Eric, my heart no longer carried resentment toward you. But that didn't mean I forgave you. We would be forever parted by death.